Robert Phoenix here, and we're back with another edition of the Astro Weather 5:15. This is my maternal grandmother's birthday. Crazy old Margaret. She was something else, man. She was something else. Isn't that right, Peachy? I think Peachy's the reincarnation of my grandmother. That's what I think. Are you my grandmother? Is that why you're here? So wherever you are, Margaret, I hope you sorted things out. You were a very eccentric and fun lady to be around. And a Taurus all the way through. You know, she used to sit up in her little crow's nest up at the top of her house. That's where she spent most of her time. And she had a couch there that she would actually sleep on. She didn't even have a real bed, although there was bedrooms and stuff in the house. It wasn't like it was dilapidated or anything. And she'd sit up there. She had her little, 2 burner stove, even though she had a kitchen downstairs. She would make her tea up there and drink her tea. And she always had, maybe this is where I got this from. She always had media on. She during the day she would have on CNN, I think, CNN or MSNBC, and a lot of the time she would be watching the stock market. She was really big into the market. You know, she was a Taurus, so that was one of her things. She loved the stock market, and then she would stay up very late at night listening to talk radio. She'd probably stay up till about two in the morning just listening to talk radio. And I'm positive I got some of these attributes from her because, fortunately or unfortunately, it's also part of my media consumption and viewing habits. Anyway, so here, who do we have here? DJMC, Brother Mike, what's happening? Liddy Lou, how are you? Dorian McLean, checking in from New Mexico. California Contrarian, KK, rebranded here. Okay. It's always good to have a rebrand every now and then. Robert Phoenix. Good morning, Robert Phoenix. How are you today? Delisa Hawking. Hello, Delisa. Sandra Jack Shaw, SJS, checking in from Big Mass Country. Double K, Catherine Kramer. She's with us from Florida. Sue Leonard is here, misbehaving too. There's my man TJ. Thomas Jordan. Lisa Ann White. Hello back. Soul Traveler. Orlando, I have finished my coffee for today. I finished my 1 cup. Greetings to you, Orlando. Michelle Grant, what's happening? Dave Sullivan sighting. Liddy Lou says it's a beautiful day in North Texas. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. There's my man Ryan. Brother Rye, what's going on? Good to see you. As always, Road Trip 1981. Hey, we got a Julie Moss sighting. There she is, the lovely and talented one, Dr. Jonas. Matt Burns, good morning back at you. PB, what's happening, PB? Laura E, hello. Hello. Paula Bizak, what's up in this Bizak? Jill Wong is here. Hi, Jill. Janine, checking in. Double B, Beth Berry. Sharon Lewis from Vero Beach, Florida. Happy birthday, Margaret. The old gal, she was a hoot. You know, she would get on the phone. She would talk to you for fucking ever, right? You could just, seriously, you just go like this. And then this was an old phone. That wouldn't be a cell phone. And 20 minutes later, she'd still be going. She was a hoot, man. Peachy, yes, she is the girl. Claire, greetings, Claire. Harriet Bowie, hey, Moira, New York City. Rainy one here in the Big Apple. Eric Adams provided me with the greatest unintentional comedy moment of the year. And it is, I don't know if you guys saw this or not. Eric Adams gives this speech. Apparently, they're having a hard time getting work clearances for the so-called migrants. And he's just, thinking about all the great skills and tools that the migrants bring to the table. And apparently there's a shortage of lifeguards in New York City. Who would have thought? Like, how many pools really are there in New York City? I mean, we should probably explore that question in general. New York City doesn't strike me as a place with a lot of public pools. Just saying. That said, or maybe he's talking about like beaches somewhere. Are there beaches in New York where people will go and swim and they need lifeguards? Anyway, um, Eric Adams made the brilliant connection that since migrants cross the Rio Grande, they must be really good swimmers. So they should be lifeguards. Like, you can't fucking make this up. You cannot make it up. It's like Idiocracy was a documentary. And so he's sitting there talking about how we need to fast track these people so they can get lifeguard jobs because they're really good swimmers. I mean, if what would happen, seriously, what would happen if let's put it on the table. Eric Adams is black. What would happen if some dumbass white mayor would have said the exact same thing? You don't think that he would be pilloried for having a quote unquote racist take on migrants just because they crossed the Rio Grande doesn't make them good swimmers? And this guy's like spitting it out like it's facts. And the funniest part is he's flanked by, two of these elevated DMV employees. And one of them is going, when he's saying this, she's going, like it's fucking gospel. Yep. You're right about that. New York City, you are in trouble. You are in big fucking trouble. You thought de Blasio was bad. Man. Eric Adams makes Bill de Blasio look like, I don't know, George Washington, or if he whatever elevated version of it. He makes him look like Ronald Reagan. My God. Not that I'm a huge Reagan fan. I think Reagan was very overrated, by the way. That's just me. Rainbows and butterflies. Rainbows and butterflies. Born in a house with the television always on. I got the love of late night media from my mom. Yeah, we didn't have the late night media on our house except in my bedroom where it was always on. Rosie Rose 22. Hi there, Joe Litke. Hit that like. Thanks, Joe. We got Elizabeth Donnell sighting. Elizabeth recently started her own business, her own home care business. Good for you, Elizabeth. So if you know anybody in the Houston area that's about to kick the bucket, get in touch with Elizabeth. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, a little sarcastic humor here in the morning. But that's the type of business she's in, and she's great at it. Esteban Rodriguez. Peace, love, and prosperity from San Antonio. Hashtag. What up? Good. Welcome to the show. I love my bull mastiff. His name is Hooch. That's an appropriate name. Maria de Ange is here. Bonjour. Platinum Happiness 2024. Good morning from her personal Idaho. I love that. I love that. SP Dimples. Hello. Hello. Europa calling. Terry Catterley. Oh no, I despise. Who does anybody really like Eric Adams? Except maybe for the 100 or so people that he's employed way beyond their means. Those are about the only people I think that really like Eric Adams. That inner circle that is making way too much money, having way too many benefits. Those are his biggest fans. Let's see. Thank God we'll be safe from drowning. Could you I mean, let's play this out. Let's say they did have a migrant as a lifeguard with very little training, because that's gonna happen. So tell me, um, do you know how to swim? You know, see. Oh, great. You're hired. Pool access by borough shows 64 locations. Well, Tommy, you never know. I'm surprised that there are 64 locations of pools in New York City. Plenty of employment opportunities. Thanks for clarification, Tom. Let's see. Governor Hochul said something to that about black children in the Bronx who do not know about computers. Yeah, there's another winner of the IQ lottery, Crazy Kathy. I can't swim, but I'm Patty dive certified. True story. I don't understand that, but I'll take it on face value that somehow works out for you. We're all in big trouble. We're all in big trouble, but it's good trouble. This stuff has got to come to the surface. It's just like a a boil that needs to be lanced. Maceo Gabbard, what's happening, Maceo? Nora Rashid, I am in great spirits today. Yes, I'm in very good spirits today. Sam is here. What's happening, Sam? Think Feliz, hola, hola, hola from Panama. Many stocks are being shorted. Crazy days ahead in the market. The Walton family just sold a shit ton of stock. Gee, I wonder why. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. The Bisu from Europa, another European. Let's see. I think we're all caught up here. We're all caught up. Yes. Good deal. Okay, let's get a little business out of the way. A little Bizac out of the way. Hit the like button, please. It definitely helps with the algorithms. The algorithms. Al Gore invented the internet, so of course we have algorithms. And what else? Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Please subscribe. We've sort of stalled out at 14,100. Right, we're leveling out at 14,100 altitude. We want to get to 20,000 feet. That's my goal, 20,000. I don't think it's an unreasonable goal. Am I right? I don't think it's unreasonable. What else do we have? Of course, if you would like to purchase a cup of coffee, which is the same as a super chat, feel free to do that. And for all you coffee purchasers, thank you. I appreciate the coffee and your contribution. Thank you so much. Also, there's a link for locals, and starting to populate a little bit of content. The locals fam got a kind of a sneak preview of today's show, both on the weather side and the 15-minute side. Little precursor, little headline, what's coming. What else? What else am I leaving out? Oh, yeah. And if you'd like to schedule a reading with me, there's that as well. All right, business out of the way. Let's get into the weather. The weather. Okay, here we go. Yes. So we did, yesterday I said, we're going to have some Royals news. And sure enough, Prince Charles's painting made a big splash yesterday. I don't know if you guys noticed the color of the painting, but it was bordering on magenta. Isn't that interesting? And everybody got just creepy vibes from it. The guy who does these paintings, I think it's the same guy that did Obama, um, has kind of that Rod Serling night gallery touch. And it really comes through on the Prince Charles painting. It just, it just is. But I will say this, I do admire the, artistry involved because there's lots of layers to the painting, right? I mean, from an objective aesthetic standpoint, from a painting standpoint, it's actually I think it's a good painting. Now, when you go a few layers deeper and go into it and feel into it and look at some of the symbolism, it is not such a good painting, right? But clearly from the painting aspect, there's a lot of technique involved in that painting. I'm telling you right now, a lot of technique. But we had royal talk yesterday, and sure enough, right, it's that moon in Leo. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this today, but I'm really going to get into it on 15, which is this whole movement called the digitine. It is crazy, right? Because there's this massive, you wouldn't know it, but this is really big. And it's this massive online movement to cancel celebrities. And this is how they're doing it. They are blocking celebrities. They're blocking them. And well, you say, well, what good does that do? Well, if you have millions of people that are blocking Kim Kardashian, who's on this list, it affects her pocketbook and it affects the companies who sponsor her because Kim Kardashian and all of these other celebrities are, theoretical spokespeople, either directly or indirectly for the products, whether they're their own or they're licensed to either pitch or sell or represent. It affects their bottom line. So if you have millions of people blocking Kim Kardashian, that means that the message that is connected to her vis-a-vis one of her products or sponsors or whatever does not get out. So there's this massive online movement, and what's triggering it is that they are all silent about what's going on in Israel and Palestine. Right? They're all none of the celebrities, unless of course you're, I don't know, James Woods. In which case, if you're James Woods, you want the Palestinians' heads on a pike, right? Um, None of the celebrities are saying anything about what's going on there. So they're forcing their hand in some ways. And what they've done is they've called it the digitine, which is the digital guillotine. And it's all happening around Algol, right? Fixed star Algol, which is the fixed star of beheadings, decapitation, lynchings. And we've talked about it before, right? We get the word alcohol from Algol. And when you drink too much alcohol, you lose your head. And this is connected to the moon in the lunar phase of Leo because we're talking about royalty. And celebrities have taken on the role of royalty in our lifetime. They have become elevated and celebrated. And guess what? People are noticing that they're worthless. And I'll tell you who else is on the list. Taylor Swift. Now, getting to the Swifties and telling the Swifties to block Taylor Swift is going to be a whole different feat. But I think as a phenomenon, this is really interesting. And again, I talked about how rare this alignment is with Uranus and the Sun and Jupiter. And I started talking about this on Sunday night. That again, we talk about how the real theoretical, cultural, collective, spectacular phenomena is going to be related to the outer signs, Sagittarius, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Pisces. And yet, the take action sign, well, I wouldn't say it's a take action sign, but once Taurus makes up its mind and does take action, the momentum is powerful, right? So, what you literally have here is the unleashing of a digital rhinoceros, which is gathering momentum. And I think this is fascinating. Like it's the digitine, and Uranus is technological, right? We're not talking about old school guillotines, but we're talking about the digitine. And it's interesting because I watched this movie last week about. I am fascinated by the French Revolution, by the way. I am absolutely fascinated by it. I'm fascinated and abhorred by it. Supposedly, I was uh, French aristocracy in a prior life, and I was spirited away out of the French Revolution and landed in Philadelphia. I don't know. Could be, quite possibly. It was an Akashic Records reading. So I don't know. I'm absolutely fascinated by the French Revolution because of the blood and all the desecration and what it did to, like, it permanently changed France and Europe and the rest of the world, right? So now we have this um, reanimation of the French Revolution with the digitine, and it's like this is going to have repercussions. This is not. It's going to have repercussions, and it all started with the Met Gala, and the Met Gala had people dressed up like the uh, Louis the 14th court of France, right? They were all dressed up in their kind of wigs and their pancake and their makeup, and it's just uncanny how this reanimation of a particular time is literally taking place right before our very eyes. It is mind blowing, and I think it's going to have an effect. It's going to have the hierarchies are being reordered right now. And that's one of the things about Taurus, being that it's in the primary earth position, is that it's reshuffling the bottom. This is what's happening. It's almost like they're putting pneumatic jacks, under the pyramid, and they're jacking up one side, but then they're jacking up the other side even more, and then the pyramid's starting to tilt, and people at the top of the pyramid are starting to fall off the top of the pyramid. This is very fascinating, and it's a moment where along last year when Pluto went into Aquarius, I talked about strange bedfellows, and that this is what Pluto in Aquarius was going to be about, strange bedfellows. So you have people that are on the right who can't stand the celebrity culture, sees them as baby eaters, adrenochrome peddlers, everything that is abhorrent about Hollywood, right? There's a version that lives on the right. The version on the left is more political, and that they're not taking a stand against the slaughter and genocide of the Palestinian people. And so we have these two disparate factions, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So it's another strange bedfellows moment. And this gets into this trine with Pluto. And I've been, clocking this. We've been talking about this over the last couple days. And so now we have this kind of common cause. And the common cause is to eliminate these absolutely superficial, fake, phony icons who stand for absolutely nothing except their own self aggrandizement and their own narcissism and their pocketbook. And these people are saying they figured out block, 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 block. And this is across all platforms. Instagram is obviously the marketplace for celebrity. Blocking on Instagram, blocking on Twitter, blocking on Facebook, any place that they're showing up, it's block, 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 block. And the demographic tends to be, I would say, Gen Z up through the millennials. So even two sub generations are making a bridge and agreeing on the fact that, yeah, these people need to be canceled. This is such a fascinating moment, and it would only really occur with Jupiter, Sun, Uranus, all orbiting around Algol, fixed star Algol, and the square with the moon in Leo, which is, again, when we think of Leo, we think about actors and celebrity in our culture. So fascinating. This, to me, this is when you look at astrology, or I look at astrology, you can't make this shit up. You cannot make this shit up. Like, it's right there. Right there. And with all due respect to people that are in sidereal, you're not going to get this moment in sidereal. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The mundane delineation here is clear. In sidereal, Jupiter is what, at like 12 Taurus? Am I right? Uranus is probably what, at 5 Taurus? They're not even close to Algol, and yet we're having this massive Algol moment on the internet. Anyway, enough cheerleading for Placidus. So here we go. Mars is still on the roll here, on the prowl, getting close to conjuncting the true node in Aries. Okay, this is gonna. Let's talk about this, because it feels to me. All right. Let's just talk about the notion of will. And I have some fun. I have some funny concepts on will. I don't, and some of you may disagree with me, and that's fine. But I don't believe we have any free will. And we say, well, of course we have free will. We have choice. We have choice, but we don't have free will. And let me explain what I mean by that. This goes back to, again, the person who I called my first spiritual teacher. I brought up free will, and he says, well, there is no such thing as free will. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And he said, there is a thing called true will. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm all ears. True will is when the will of the individual is aligned with the will of God. And that becomes your true will. There's no indistinction between the two. So when you are operating from your true will, then you are an unstoppable force, essentially. And then you are moving along with the greater pattern of your life. And then you don't fuck around by making choices that eventually get you back on path with your true will. Now, you may or may not agree with that. That's fine. But when I heard it, it made sense to me. And the reason it made sense to me is because up until that, there was a certain point in my life where, and by the way, it's happened every now and then since then, but there was a point in my life at that time where I was a real fuck up. And it seemed like no matter what I did, it was wrong. Not really wrong, but it didn't work. And I mean, I was dysfunctional. There were certain things that I could do, but the ability to um, enhance my own decisions with right choices, and then the energy that flows out of the right choice was not there. And I had a very pivotal moment in my life where basically I just said, okay, I'm giving my life over to God. And it's like, you got it. I'm doing a shitty job at this. I'm all ears. I'm all ears, right? Just you take over here and I'm gonna learn. And when that happened, my life changed and I started to make better choices. And when I was engaged in the world, it was like my power was amplified, or the power that was coming through me was amplified. I'm like, wow, this is cool. This is really cool. There's actually a higher power working through me. And then when you're in that place, you never want it to go away. You just want to stay in that zone forever because it beats anything else that you've ever experienced. You know, all these minor choices or applications of your will, which may or may not have, amounted to anything, just become minuscule. So this is my experience and my uh, reasoning. Not even reasoning; it's just my experience around this. So let's talk about Aries and will, right? As it relates to the concept that I'm referring to. So we have the true node, which sounds a lot like true will. At least it shares one common word with it. And in Aries, it is undifferentiated, meaning that there is no thought between uh, impulse and action. That's how Aries operates. The highest level of that manifestation would be the divine impulse working through the individual, and then the individual acting on the divine impulse, or the will of the higher self, right? Which would be the will of God, or in essence, your true will. So with Mars approaching within a 3-degree orb, perhaps this is a concept that you may want to entertain, especially if you feel stuck in your life. If you feel stuck in your life, there's no uh what's the word I'm looking for? There's no downside to just handing it over and say, look, man, I'm stuck in neutral here, or I'm spinning my tires and going nowhere. I've exhausted all my resources. I've done everything in my power to either stay in the game, stay afloat, or change my life, and it doesn't seem to be working. Well, you may want to consider this concept and just say, look, God, I can't handle this anymore. I'm depleted. Show me what I need to do. Show me what I need to do. Show me where I need to go. Show me who I need to listen to or learn from, whatever. Down here in Texas, they talk about Jesus take the wheel. I'm not going to necessarily use that vernacular, but this is one of these moments where I think, you know, we could look at it and have a discussion about it. And because clearly, if you have this in your life, your power will be, or the power that goes through you will be augmented in greater than the power that you think you have. Now, we could talk about things like violence and war and all the things that go along with Mars and Aries. We can have that discussion, but I'd rather have another discussion about the higher application of this. And everyday life is mundane. Uh, there are things that you have to go through and deal with that are not always fun or sexy or revelatory or whatever. But even in those moments, you can cut through things faster if you feel connected to a higher source, which again is just a concept because we're dealing with geometry and space. But you understand what I'm talking about. And a higher purpose and feeling like you're on the beam. You're on the beam. And when you're on the beam, like your life is happening. So I think this is a really interesting thing to contemplate and meditate on. And where are you in your life with the application of your will? It's a very interesting, I think, question. And I know a lot of you generators out there, all you got to do is just respond and your will kicks in easy, right? But what happens if you have this connection and your response is even greater or more fully fleshed out and uh, more undifferentiated, and then the action and the speed and the time with your response is faster and more effective. Anyway, food for thought. We have Chiron and Mercury. Mercury's about ready to go into Taurus. So now we're really going to get into that Mercury Pluto square, and that's kicking and screaming. It's kicking and screaming with the Mercury Pluto square. Uh, I have a Mercury Pluto square story I'm going to share with you, but not here. It'll be on 15 minutes. Happened to me yesterday. And if you want to get to the bottom of something, the Mercury Pluto square is your friend. It is the teeth of the pit bull in the side of an issue, right? Or the teeth of the pit bull in the side of an inquiry. It doesn't let go until it gets what it needs. I guess, which is flesh separating itself from the body, flesh separating itself from the bone. Yes, hang on till you get there. Anyway, there's a persistence with a Mercury Pluto square. Now, I will say this caveat emptor, because if you are persistent in uh, doing your best to find the answer to the question that perplexes you, the answer that you get may not uh, may not be the one you were looking for. You may not be prepared for what you'll find out. So just saying there, right? I also feel like there's a lot of financial, um, there's a lot of heavy financial lifting going on with this Mercury Pluto square. There's all kinds of, Trump just like went all in on the Bitcoin community, where the Bitcoin community like invested all this money in Trump. And for a long time, Trump fucking hated Bitcoin. So it'll be interesting to see how that dialogue unfolds. Anyway, there's your Astro Weather for today. Kill your idols, connect with your higher will. And if you're looking for answers, deep answers that have eluded you, this is a good time, but be prepared for what you'll find. Okay, let's get into the next phase of today's show, which is, of course, our True Hemp Science start. Oh man, I froze. Son of a bitch. All right, don't go away. I will be right back. I will be right back. Please don't go away. I will be right back. Hold on. Hold on. Where are we? Yep. Okay, we're back. Thank you for your patience. About the internet, by the way, it's this computer. It's probably time for another computer. All right, let's get into our star of the day. Banner time. Of course, the sponsor of the show is True Hemp Science, and truehempscience.com is your source for all things CBD. And I got to tell you, everything that Chris does is great, but his special elixirs are off the freaking charts. I don't know if he has a special going on there right now. He had a special a while back. But if you do spend $100 or more and type in 15MINS, that's 15MINS, you will get a free goodie bag with things that I guarantee you will like what shows up in the goodie bag. $150 or more gets you free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money back guarantee. And Chris is great at being available to answer all your CBD questions and needs around CBD. Just go to his website, make an appointment, and he'll walk you right through the menu of all your choices. All right, let's get into our True Hemp Science star of the day. It is none other than Brian Eno, who might be one of the most important cultural figures of the 20th century. What do I mean by that? Well, Brian Eno started off as a member of a group called Roxy Music, who were this kind of avant-garde rock band that was filled with these very interesting characters. You had Brian Ferry, who played the role of like the crooner in the tuxedo. Every time I ever saw Brian Ferry sing, I always wanted to take a shower. He felt like he was like sweating all the time. You had Phil Manzanera, who was a very underrated guitarist, by the way, who always wore these crazy glasses and these crazy jumpsuits. And then you had Brian Eno, who had like boas and this crazy hair, and he wore these platform shoes. I mean, Eno looked like he was from another world. And I think he was on the first two Roxy Music records, or the first three Roxy. By the time Country Life comes around, he leaves and starts his solo career. Now, the thing that's interesting about Eno is he didn't know how to play an instrument. So he gets these, he got a Moog synthesizer, and he had some interesting effects that he had, plugged in, and basically was like this sound sculptor. And, he taught himself how to play along the way. But really, his contribution to the band was quite visual, and then adding these, weird sounds that would accompany their music. And so this is where Eno begins to make an impact, and it's in the realm of electronic music. And he is the father of what we call ambient music. And he was very interested in creating a music that you could listen to in the background, and bring it to the foreground, but it could remain in the background if you needed it to or wanted it to. And he has some solo records which are more song oriented, and they're all great records. You have Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. My favorite excuse me. My favorite, Before and After Science. And then Another Green World, where he starts to get into this concept of ambient music. And then he creates Music for Airports, which is just straight electronic ambient music. And he also carves out a niche as a producer because his production values are uh, quite interesting, and he has a 3 record collaboration with David Bowie in his Berlin phase. He produces the Talking Heads, and he and David Byrne, who are born one day apart, David Byrne born May 14th, are tight, super tight. On the other side, on May 16th, which is tomorrow, is Robert Fripp's birthday. And of course, Eno and Fripp have their collaborations. Uh, and Fripp providing the guitar on Heroes, and then there's the No Pussyfooting record which is a great record, by the way. There's a song in there called Swastika Girls, which is uh, interesting to say the least. That's Fripp and Eno. So it's funny how Eno has collaborated very closely with these two guys who are on the other side, on each side of his son, in longtime collaborations. And so his imprint in music is tremendous. Of course, he produces U2, and he and Daniel Lanois, who is another collaborator of Eno, produced the Joshua Tree, which is U2's probably their greatest record. And then he produces Achtung Baby, brings on this guy named Flood to engineer it. Eno's a genius. He's just a genius. And when you have Uranus in the third house, and I, whenever I run across this in a chart with somebody, I'm like, you have a knack of genius in your chart, and you are incredibly inventive. And sure enough, I think it was last year I did a reading for a fellow in San Antonio who has Uranus in his third house, and I said, you should probably look into patents for things that you've developed or have developed. That's exactly what he's done. He had patents on, certain building materials and certain building applications. So if you have Uranus in the third house, do not sleep on Uranus. Let your unique ability to think really come through and shine. What's interesting is Eno basically has Israel's chart, right? Because I think we're in the commemoration of Israel. This is Israel's chart, but it's different, right? Like it's completely configured differently. Israel's a Libra rising, and Eno's an Aries rising. You can see with Eno too, the Aries rising, because people that have Aries rising, especially men, tend to lose their hair, and they have these big foreheads. And for a long time, Eno would wear hats to cover his hair, um, or lack thereof, right? But you can see and again, Aries rising is just like, let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Let's get things done. And he's been incredibly prolific throughout his career. And he has a lot of creative energy in his fifth house with the moon, Pluto, and Saturn all in Leo. And then the sextiles with Neptune. Anytime you get a sextile or a trine with Neptune, there's enhanced creative potential. And Eno he's got Mercury in the second house. Is Gemini again. He's very bright. And he's also a bit of an occultist. And he came up with this thing called oblique strategies. And you can see the occultist in him with Chiron in the south node in Scorpio, right? Like he's got like a past life as either, like a wizard or a warlock or somebody who understands magic and how to manipulate, uh, you know, forces through the application of attraction or repulsion, which is really what Scorpio does. And he created this thing called oblique strategies, which is a bunch of cards. If you can find an oblique strategies deck, they're very expensive. And these are cards that would give you an action to take, right? Whatever the action was. So they're not like tarot cards in the sense of like the Queen of Swords or whatever, right? They're more cards that are about direction. And he and Bowie were very into um, chance composition, which again I think has a lot to do with the spontaneity of Uranus and then even to some extent this Chiron South Node conjunction. And what they would do is they would put notes on a blackboard behind them, and then they would take a stick and they would point back there and say they go this one, and they would take that note, and then this one they take that note, and then they would kind of put them together. And side two of Heroes is all chance composition, like based on what that and the electronic tracks on Low are the same thing. They're all based on chance composition. He's a very interesting character in terms of his creative output. One of the things that I've always loved about Eno is that I think he understands uh, the the quality of choice. And you would think that somebody with Jupiter in the ninth house in Sagittarius would want the buffet of the golden chick of options. But there's a documentary if you want to learn more about him called Oblique Strategies, and he talks about the creative process. And I've always felt like this was something that I could totally relate to. He said, "Give me 4 or 5 excellent options versus 25 mediocre ones." And so for him, that would be in terms of his electronics, right? Like give me 4 or 5 of the absolute best synthesizers and best patches I can find, and I'll just work with those because they're I don't need to fiddle around with 30 other options. And when I started off with astrology, that was my that was my strategy. It was like, okay, I, I didn't when I first started off with astrology, I didn't even use asteroids or fixed stars. I just used the planets, the nodes, and Chiron. Eventually, I brought the asteroids in and the fixed stars in, and that's really the sort of the ceiling of what I use with a chart. And the reason I did that was because I felt like if you added too many things into the chart, that it would dilute the chart and it would dilute the potential for the reading. And so what I've always stressed with astrology is if you understand the definition of the planets and the houses and the triplicities and the angles, if you really understood them at a very deep level and you could articulate them, you didn't need anything else, right? But what happens, this is just my, and I don't think it's the case with every astrologer, but I've seen astrologers throw the kitchen sink at charts and these trans plutonian planets, and there's a shit ton of asteroids, and sometimes they make sense. Other times I feel like it's just like, well, there's too much on the table. Just pick the things that are the most appropriate and just use them, right? And I learned that from Eno, and it's like it always made sense to me. And I feel like that's in a lot of ways very Taurian, even though a lot of his Taurus stuff is kind of in conflict, right? But I think that the Mars Sun square with Mars and Leo, I think that's about the focus of using the options, the quality options. Um, he has Neptune in the 7th house, which I think has a lot to do with his musical collaborations, and even Uranus and Venus in the 3rd house. And you could just see it's almost familial, right? Like David Byrne on one side and Robert Fripp on the other. They're almost, they're almost fraternal in some ways. Um, David Bowie is a Capricorn, so Bowie shows up in his 10th house, and I think Bowie benefited from Eno, and Eno benefited from Bowie. And I think Jupiter in the ninth makes him incredibly philosophical. And that Mars Jupiter trine, I also feel like gives him the ability to finish products or projects. Um, he's a fascinating character, right? At some point, he got into perfumes, and which I think was very Taurus like. And he did a whole album called Neroli, which is not a very good album, but it's all based on like the base scent for a perfume, Neroli. He's a fascinating character, and I think one of the most important musical contributors, production, cultural of the 20th century. There's really no talking heads as we know them without Brian Eno. There's no heroes and David Bowie without Brian Eno. Um, there's no Joshua Tree. And some people say, well, good. There's no Joshua Tree without Brian. So this guy casts a very large shadow over the 20th century in music and ideas like electronics and ambience and all that other stuff. All right, went a little long today. Sorry about that. But sometimes I get excited when there's a really good start of the day. All right, join me, please, over on 15 Minutes. Link in the description of the show. Chattaria, you're the absolute best. Everybody have a blessed day. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of the Astro Weather. Bye for now.